From WXOJLP Northampton, 103.3 FM, your Valley Free radio station. Welcome. I'm Warren Odess-Gillette, and this is A Baha'i Perspective. Welcome to A Baha'i Perspective. I recorded an interview with Steve Zaat on April 8, 2019. Steve's a singer-songwriter and composes songs with Baha'i themes. His most recent collection of songs is called Jumpstart to Eternity. We feature a number of his compositions in the interview from the album, and he gives us some insights on the inspiration for composing a song and what to look for when listening to a song. I started the interview by asking Steve where he grew up. And what was religious life like growing up?
I was actually born in St. John, and we lived here for a couple of years, St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. Then we moved to a small town in Prince Edward Island, a small island province in Canada, and the town was called Montague. Dad was a music teacher and played music a lot, and he was the organist and choir director in the Catholic Church. So I was singing at a pretty young age. I went to Mass every Sunday. We were pretty close to the church, so that was our family rhythm for Sunday mornings, go to church, come home and have bacon and eggs and singing. And Dad was much a big part of the musical aspect of that.
How about music? How did music play out for you as you were growing up?
Well, I didn't discover the guitar until kind of late in my musical life, but I sang in that choir. And also, my parents are immigrants from Holland. And so in Prince Edward Island, we had a Dutch choir, sang at a lot of multicultural events. And they were all in Dutch. I don't really speak it, but I still remember some of the songs. So we just did a lot of singing. I remember I was around 14 years old, and I didn't really know what my future was like, and I didn't really know what I was good at. And we had this guitar that was hanging on the wall. It was almost more of an ornament. And I just happened to ask my father. I said, "Hey, what are the notes of the strings?" So I kind of got it in tune with the piano, and I just discovered this love and sort of an aptitude that I hadn't really known was there. So right now I do some guitar teaching. So I'm always excited that maybe that I'll encounter that person who will discover guitar the same way I did and discover, that gift within themselves.
Steve, what was your spiritual journey that led you to the Baha'i faith?
So we grew up in the Catholic environment, and I enjoyed that. And I remember really being moved by Jesus Christ Superstar. It was more of a spiritual experience in my early life. I really was moved by the story. But then as I started studying the world, and we had National Geographics, I remember reading them, and I couldn't really square it. If I'd see this beautiful woman with her child, and that was Hindu, and I couldn't get over the fact that I was in the right religion and this person somehow was in the wrong one. So I didn't know how to sort that out. So I just kind of didn't think about it for a while. And at one point, my sister, I had heard that she had become a member of this religion that I'd never heard of before called the Baha'i faith. And this was a time around the Jonestown incident, and I was a little concerned, suspicious, and so we had a good chance to talk about it. And I remember what she said to me. She explained progressive revelation, whereby the founders of the world's major religions are like teachers in grades that teach mankind according to its intellectual capacity. And so it's progressive. And there's no right or wrong religion. They're all just taking humankind down various stages. And instantly it removed many of my issues and questions. I remember saying this to her. I said, well, geez, I must be a Baha'i, because that's like the first thing that I've ever heard, really, that makes so much sense. So I didn't become a Baha'i right away. I was playing in a rock band and enjoying that.
Not that they are necessarily mutually exclusive.
No, no. But I was enjoying a certain lifestyle.
A rock band lifestyle.
But my sister was patient and loving, and then she announced that she had cancer, and so we talked more, and eventually she succumbed to the cancer, and I went to her funeral. I was incredibly moved by the beauty of the writings that were chosen for the funeral, and I got to drive. It was in Charlottetown, PEI, and I got to drive with this wonderful couple, Bob and Shirley Donnelly. They're stalwarts of the Charlottetown Baha'i community, and they drove me for where I was living to in Halifax, and we just had a big, long conversation, and they gave me a book called Baha'u'llah in the New Era. I was pretty moved by all that, and I really had this sense of my sister in the next world loving me, and I would read the book and kind of drift away from the book, but get back to the book. And then one morning I eventually said, that's it. I'm going to stop drinking and just quit and just see what happens, right? I figured it would be good economically and perhaps good for my own growth. And then I just kept on reading and encountered some Baha'is in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. And then I think I can remember the night when I'd visited them and we were reading something, and I just remember that's when it was it went from being an intellectual exercise to my heart. That's the night it went from my head to my heart, and that's when I knew that I had to do something about this, and I decided to become a Baha'i.
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter who's produced a number of CDs, and we'll be going and sampling some of his music in this interview. In fact, we can start that now, Steve. I had asked you to pick a number of songs that we could sample on the interview. So the first one I'd like to have you talk about is your song called Low Watermark. Why don't you tell us about that one and what folks should listen to when they hear the song?
The music is generally that I've written, and hopefully that we'll hear tends to be positive, but there was a well-known tablet by the founder of the Baha'i faith is Baha'u'llah, and this is called the Fire Tablet. And in this tablet, it's very lengthy, but it describes the torment of the messenger of God looking at the world the way it is and almost crying to God, there's so much injustice. Where is the justice? Reminds me a little bit when Christ on the cross said, oh God, why hast thou forsaken me? That notion of like crying out. And I think if the manifestations, the messengers of God can feel that once in a while, it's natural that people would. So I guess I was just kind of thinking of where we were and where we are really at our time in civilization when it seems like the beacons of justice and fairness and are hard to find, but they're there if you look. So the Fire Tablet actually has a great ending. This song is, I guess, a little bit of that expression of where's the justice? When will we see it? Could it be soon?
So this is the song Low Watermark.
What
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter who writes songs a lot about the Baha'i faith and what it means and historically some aspects of the Baha'i faith. And the song we just heard was called Low Watermark. Now the next song is called Cry Out. So Steve, why don't you tell us about that one?
Well, as a songwriter, sometimes you're with a guitar and you're not exactly sure what to write. And so I find when I have a purpose or a direction or somebody asks me to write something, it really actually helps the process out, because then you can start thinking about what you're going to write about, what the subject is. And so in this case, there was a plan that the Baha'is in Atlantic Canada were talking about, just to talk about the faith more, and I guess what we call teaching the faith. And so the plan was called the Mary and Jack Teaching Plan. And there's a wonderful figure in the Baha'i faith. Her name is Mary and Jack. And actually, she was born in St. John, New Brunswick, where I live right now. It was around 1921. She was quite an influential figure, and she did some great things, and she was a tremendous artist. And she actually lived in Sofia, Bulgaria during World War II, because something that Baha'is will do is they will move to areas where there's no Baha'is. And she was asked to go to Sofia, Bulgaria, and she was even asked to leave, and she refused to leave. So she was quite an impressive figure. And so we thought we'd name this teaching plan about Mary and Jack. So I thought I'd come up with kind of an anthem that would be singable, because sometimes as a singer-songwriter, some songs are singable and some songs aren't really anthemic. So I just thought, it needs a good anthem and a chorus that everybody can sing. And I read some of the prayers. That's where some of the lyrical imagery comes from. And so, yeah, it's just a sing-along, kind of a hands in the air, kind of cry out, kind of a great anthem, I guess.
So this song is called Cry Out.
There's something astir in these provinces of Atlantic Canada. People's hearts, they are now prepared for the message of Baha'u'llah. The people seeking answers to the questions we all face. Now more than ever, we must all arise, loose our tongues, speak forth His praise. Cry out in the mountains, cry out in the valley, the forests, the island and the sea. There's a new world in the making. We are His army, marching on to victory. Marching on to victory. This is the faith of heroes, among them Mary and Jack. Take her example and forge ahead. If we do, there'd be no turning back. Cry out in the mountains, cry out in the valley, the forests, the island and the seas. There's a new world in the making, and we are His army, marching on to victory. Marching on to victory. We live in a day I've never seen before, with a sacred duty to perform. Dare we linger, dare we hesitate? Time does not stop, does not wait. Deja Shisha, let it burn. la question devenue. Plus que jamais, cela t'aime affamé de chanter par tous ces louanges. Cry out in the mountains, cry out in the valleys, the forests, the island and the sea. There's a new world in the making, and we are his army marching on to victory. Marching on to victory. Cry out in the mountains, cry out in the valley, the forest, the island and the sea. There's a new world in the making, and we are his army marching on to victory. Marching on to victory. Marching on to victory.
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter, and we just heard his song Cry Out. And the next selection that I want to feature, Steve, is Joy and Pain. So why don't you tell us about that one?
Well, I was reading this great writing by one of the central figures in the Baha'i faith. His name is Abdul-Baha. He was the son of the founder, Baha'u'llah, and Abdul-Baha was the interpreter and exemplar of some of Baha'u'llah's writings. And his writings are very accessible and great. And he was talking about the influences in our lives, about joy and pain, how if a spiritual focus can only bring you joy. And the world tends to have pain, but those are also great opportunities and platforms for our growth. So it's a little bit about going through our lives with these two opposing forces and being able to navigate through that and knowing what true joy really is. And something in this song, too, that I had fun with while recording it is a friend of mine, Saeed Farougi. He's a wonderful santur player. He's a Persian man and the santur is a stringed instrument, and that's played like a hammered dulcimer. So I wanted to have a Western kind of a folk style, but with a little Eastern flavor. So I was lucky enough to have him record with us. And there's even some dobro style guitar, like a resophonic guitar in it. So it's a nice little blend of cultures. So you'll hear Saeed playing his wonderful santur.
So this song is called Joy and Pain.
Plucking on the sixth string, trying to chase these blues away. Naturally, my thoughts return to you. I think of how my life has changed for better, forever. Life ain't so bad. I'm just glad to be here with you. Hold the line, don't ever let this boat drift away. Never mind, those troubled times don't mean much anyway. If I fall, please pick me up to face another day. Oh, joy and pain. It's funny how you look at things and then you look away. Taking life for granted, living day to day. And then one day you say, hey, how'd I miss that anyway? Life can change and often should, so be that as it may. Ooh. let this boat drift away. And never mind, those troubled times don't mean much anyway. If I fall, please pick me up to face another day. Oh, joy and pain. Oh, joy and pain. When our hearts are dark, our souls in distress, the world around us offers us quiet little. Our joy gives us wings to soar, our spirits truly free, to see the hidden mysteries of life. Hold the line, don't ever let this boat drift away. And never mind, those troubled times don't mean much anyway. If I fall, please pick me up to face another day. Oh, joy and pain. Hold the line, don't ever let this boat drift away. Never mind, those troubled times don't mean much anyway. If I fall, please pick me up to face another day. Oh, joy and pain. Oh, joy and
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter, and we just heard his song Joy and Pain. And the next selection, Steve, is called Heroes for Gold. Why don't you tell us about that one?
Well, this was another song that I was asked to write. There was an event where somebody was being honored for their service to a community. But the guitar riff that the song starts with was a really interesting experience for me. We'll hear it at the very beginning. When I first became a Baha'i, I was a musician, and there was this wonderful friend and mentor who was living in Halifax. Her name was Anne Boyles. She was very encouraging of my artistic endeavors, and she was really excited to see what might happen when the faith met my art. And she was always encouraging me to, it's like when the peanut butter gets to go with the chocolate, I guess. So she was always egging me on. And so she was serving at the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel. She was editing a book there. And so she was out of town. So while she was gone, I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and music was just coming out of me. And so I grabbed the guitar and I wrote that riff probably about 2 a.m. And then a bunch of other ideas were happening, and I was quite prolific, and unusually so. When she came back from her service in Israel, where the Baha'i World Center is, I was excited to inform her of what had been going on. I said, well, Anne, you wouldn't believe what's happening. I've been writing all this music while you were gone. And so she kind of nodded and smiled. And in the Holy Land, the World Center, there are some very special shrines where the founders of the Baha'i faith, the Bab and Baha'u'llah, are buried. And those are very holy sites, and Baha'is consider it to be the holiest sites. Baha'is go there for special prayers when they get to visit the Holy Land on pilgrimage, or if they're working there. And so the prayers from the shrines are very special. I kind of liken them to when you plug a guitar into an amplifier and it's that much more amplified. I think the shrines are a little bit like that. So I told Anne, I said, oh, Anne, I've been writing all this music. And she said, oh, well, that's great. I'm sure, you're getting a lot of love from your sister, Teresa, in the next world. And she said, oh, I said a couple of prayers for music while I was in the shrines. And my jaw dropped, really, when I thought about that. Because the power of prayer anyway, and just the fact that somebody that so loving and encouraging and doing that, and being really affected by it. So that launched me into a way of writing music whereby, trying to meditate, trying to do things that were conducive to that creative process, and saying some prayers and just tapping into that spiritual source and for that creativity. It doesn't always work, but when I get in the zone, it really helps.
And so this song sort of represents that zone you were in.
Yes, it talks about role models as well, and being a great role model. But some of us may not even realize that we're role models, especially younger people. And there's always somebody to look up to somebody else. And I think if we can think about that, we can always be role models, and we can always have role models. It's always great to get a little and give a little, I think, and be inspired by people who inspire you to better yourself, especially in guitar. There's lots of great guitar players that inspire me, right? And I teach as well. So I think that's a bit of a similar situation.
So here is Heroes for Gold.
As I look up to you, I can see how I want to be a shining example of the things I believe. In the dark of the night, I can still hear that nightingale singing its sweet melody. But for now I digress to a world of uncertainty. Pillars of truth are few and far between. Now we need you more than ever, so our heroes to be have a vision, a goal and a dream. Well, I'm lucky, I guess, to have someone there for me like a beacon showing the way. The life I want to live is truly attainable. I'll never trade my heroes for gold. When you think of what's best for the world of humanity, the oneness of its peoples, like the waves of one sea. Now we need it more than ever, so generations to be live in peace as one family. Well, I'm lucky, I guess, to have someone there for me like a beacon, a showing the way. The life I want to live is truly attainable. I'll never trade my heroes for gold. Well, I'm lucky, I guess, to have
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, a singer-songwriter, and we're sampling some of his songs. We had just heard Heroes for Gold, and now we're going to listen to Who is Writing the Future. Steve, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that song.
Actually, I'm kind of realizing a lot of my songs are songs people have told me to write. So this is a neat story. I was at a talk one time. It was being given by a gentleman named Douglas Martin, and he was at the time serving on the supreme administrative body for the Baha'i faith, the Universal House of Justice. That institution actually works at our World Center in Haifa, Israel, and he's a Canadian man, and he had a great talk, and I can't remember what it was about, but he was talking to people afterwards and greeting them, and I kind of got in line, and when I got to talk to him, he asked me what I did. Like, he was really interested, and I said, well, I'm a musician and a songwriter. And he said, well, you should write a song about this document that the Baha'i international community just released called Who is Writing the Future? And I said, well, yeah, he's a tall man, kind of an impressive guy. And so I was gulped and nodded. Okay, sure. So then I said, well, I better read up on this document. And I don't know, 50 pages. It's a great read. If you ever get a chance, it's called Who is Writing the Future? So I said, well, how am I going to condense this into 3 verses and a few choruses? So I just read it and got some salient points, and I wrote the song. And then there was one summer, there was what's called a summer school. Baha'is attend these in the summertime, and Mr. Martin was speaking at that one. I asked the organizers if I could play this song for Mr. Martin, so I got to play it, and he couldn't quite remember the interaction, but I actually had a picture of him talking to me. So I showed him the picture, and I said, oh yeah, so you asked me to write this song, and here it is. So I played it on acoustic, which was probably more to his liking, but when I decided to record it, I made it into a bit of a hefty rock song, and it's got some lead guitar in it. I grew up listening to lots of great lead guitarists, Eddie Van Halen and the like, so I thought I'd let her rip a little bit on it too, though.
So this is called Who is Writing the Future?
Sentiments are fading fast, and there's evidence. Ecclesiastics and presidents have gotta get back to the rudiments. The 20th century was quite a time. Sand to fiber, optic line, the coming together of all mankind. It's your story and it's mine. Who is writing? Who is writing the future? Who is writing the future? Now there's no better chance for this thing to advance, and I say we take it. If it's not you or me, well then who? Ethnic conflicts and prejudice are aberrations, I tell you this. Signs are there, they can't be missed. We gotta work hard to light the darkness. The wanton pursuit of happiness, a corrosive ball of consequence. Elitism seems like it's boundless, while most of us don't have sustenance. Who is writing? Who is writing the future? Who is writing? Who is writing the future? Now there's no better chance for this thing to advance, and I say we take it. If it's not you or me, well then who?
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter, and we've been sampling some of his songs. We just finished hearing Who is Writing the Future, and the next one is called That's Me. So maybe you could, Steve, tell us a little bit about that song.
Well, there's a lot to talk about here with this particular song, and I'll start by explaining something that Baha'is believe about death. So the song is about death, or the next world. And something the Baha'is believe is that the world that awaits us is not unlike the world that awaits a baby while it's in the womb. The baby in the womb is developing its fingers and toes and pancreases and all the instruments that it'll need to be born into this world. In a like manner, in this world, we are developing other attributes that we will utilize as we are born into the world that awaits us. If you think about the separation between the baby in the womb and the world that awaits it, like the baby's unaware of what's coming, but we love that baby. We know about it, and we sing to it and pray for it and rub the belly, and in a way we're kind of in the same world. This is a great metaphor for the souls that are in the next world that await our birth into that world. And while it's natural to grieve and to miss somebody, and I've had a number of individuals in my life who've died and passed on to the next world, so I've had a lot of opportunity to ponder this. So one of the Baha'i writings, Baha'u'llah reassures us that these souls, that when they go to the next world, they're actually involved not only in loving us, but inspiring us. And he says that these souls are leaven, which leaveneth the world of being. These souls infuse us with creativity. So a friend of mine said, you should write a song about my nephew who died. That's quite a thing to ask. And it's quite a thing to try and deliver as well. So I really thought long and hard about what kind of approach I would take. So I thought I'd write the song from the perspective of somebody who had gone to the next world, who is loving us from that world. So the first lyrics are, when you're sitting in the dark looking at the stars, I feel your love surrounding me. So how many of us have gone out and looked at stars? It's one of the things about bereavement and grief. We all experience it, right? So those were the first lyrics, and I said, "Oh yeah, okay. I think that's the way I'm going to write the song." So I wrote it and played it for my friend. She passed it along to her sister, and her sister said, "Oh, these lyrics are so great. It'd be great if somehow this was a book." I was at a conference, and there was a friend of mine, Susan Rose, and she's a visual artist. She said, "Oh, we should collaborate on something sometime." And I said, "Well, it just so happens I've got this song that could use some illustrations." So we self-published the book, and we made a few copies of them, and didn't sell a ton, but there was a hospital in Halifax that used them and as a bereavement resource. So hopefully something will come of that particular song, because the illustrations are lovely.
So this is called That's Me.
When you're sitting in the dark, looking at the stars, I feel your love surrounding me. So I'll send a little sign to show you I'm fine. Many things are real that we can't see. Will you miss me? I'm not that far. You can't touch me, but you feel my heart. This bird has burst its cage asunder, eyes wide and filled with wonder. Think of me and feel a little breeze. That's me. That's me, that's me, that's me. I know some might say I was taken away, and ask how this can be just or fair. what these mysteries about. Well, I'm not lost but found, and my hope is that you won't despair. Well, you miss me, I'm not that far. You can't touch me, but you feel my heart. An eagle flies overhead, that song I sing gets in your head. You get inspired and ask, how can this be? That's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. And when that day comes, when you're born to this world eternal, you will find me in an ocean of light. From the highest peaks we'll gaze on what no pen can describe. So that's it from here. Now you know I'm near, as well I'm in great company. So from time to time I'll drop you a line. Soon begins our sweet eternity. Well, you miss me, I'm not that far. You can't touch me, but you feel my heart. This bird has burst its cage asunder, eyes wide and filled with wonder. Think of me and feel a little breeze. Oh, think of me, feel a little breeze. That's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. That's me.
I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter, and we just listened to the song That's Me. And you had mentioned, Steve, about the illustrated book, which can be a bereavement resource for folks, that you collaborated with Susan Rose. Is there a way that people can access that resource by any chance?
Well, right now, the book, it's not available online. Okay. But what I did recently do is I have a YouTube channel, Steve Zaat Music, where a lot of these songs that we're listening to are available on YouTube. And That's Me is also on there with the illustrations that are in the book. So you'll get a chance to enjoy them and see how Susan interpreted the lyrics. So that's one way you can enjoy it. And hopefully at some point the book will be published and it'll be widely accessible.
So the next song is called Face to Face. So why don't you tell us about that one?
I talked about my sister Teresa earlier. She was my first encounter with the Baha'i faith. And I talked about these souls in the next world who love us. And there's no doubt in my mind that I get a lot of that love from Teresa. I was just driving one day, actually, to where we grew up in Prince Edward Island. It was, I think, a Thanksgiving weekend, and I was going to go be with family. And just the lyrics came to my mind. Oh, my sister, when you see the master, won't you give him my warmest regards? I'll explain who the master is. I talked about Abdul-Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, and he's a number of titles and terms of endearment. So the master is one of them. And I just was thinking about her in that, like, because I was loving the figures of the faith, and I imagined her consorting with them. And it was just saying, hey, when you see Abdul-Baha, just say hello. So when those lyrics came into my mind, I was driving, and I said, oh, I can't forget this. So I pulled over and I found an old power bill in my glove compartment and scribbled it on the paper. And then I picked it up later, and I was able to kind of finish it later. But that's kind of how it started. And so the song references many of the heroes and central figures of the Baha'i faith. And it also talks about that eventual sweet reunion that we get when we go to the next world and those souls await us.
So this is called Face to Face.
Oh, my sister, when you see the master, won't you give him my warmest regards? Oh, my sister, when you see the leaf, ask her to watch over me from afar. And when you see the blessed beauty, won't you thank him for the new heart? Well, I know someday I'll see you face to face. Oh, my sister, won't you see that my children are reared in the arms of his love? And if you can help strengthen the weak to serve their Lord up above, that all God's children may see the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Oh, I know someday I'll see you face to face. I'll sometimes wonder why, oh why. I guess I'll know in due time of the life that you touch. I'm a drop in the ocean. Well, I know you're doing fine. Oh, my sister, as I sing you this song, won't you sing a song for me? Drink from the cup with confidence, the cup that is life indeed. So pray that I'm steady, that I'll be ready to give account for my deeds. Well, I know someday I'll see you face to face. Well, I know someday I'll see you face to face.
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter, and we just heard his song Face to Face. Steve, where can people find your music? You had mentioned your YouTube channel, but maybe you could remind folks about that and elsewhere that folks can find your music.
I just actually got a lot of my music on YouTube somewhat recently, so I haven't really been the greatest marketer. So that's currently where you can hear all of that album, Jumpstart to Eternity. I had stevezat.com for a while, and it kind of got a little bit neglected, so I'll be kicking that in again. So that's a great way to start hearing the music. The YouTube channel, the best way right now, but there'll be better means of accessing that hopefully in the future.
And that's Steve Zaat, Z-A-A-T music on YouTube?
Correct. The two A's are
Yep,
the key.
2 A's. So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, who's a singer-songwriter, and we had finished sampling music. Are all these pieces from Jumpstart to Eternity?
All these pieces are, and the title is something that kind of relates to a lot about what we're talking about. I was at another talk. There's a gentleman named William Hatcher. He was quite a heavy philosopher, and there was a lot about his talk that went way over my head. But there was one thing he said that stuck. He was talking about this idea that we're preparing for the next world. And it's the hardships that we have, and it's the resistance, and sometimes the suffering and the tests that we have that speeds up our growth, our spiritual growth in a profound way, in a way as if you're lifting a dumbbell. If it's too light, there's really no resistance and not much growth. So if you think of it that way, it's the hardships that really speed up, and it's like a jump start if we choose to do so, right? That's up to our volition in terms of how we want to grow.
So I'm speaking with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter, and you can find his music on Steve Zaat Music on YouTube, Zaat being Z-A-A-T. So Steve, you mentioned to me before we did this interview that you have a new project started. Why don't you tell us about that?
Once I finished the recording, I've been kind of writing here and there. So one of the things Baha'is do is, of course, we organize globally and we set particular plans, like there'd be a 4-year plan or a 5-year plan. The focus has been on a number of things, like these junior youth groups that we've been having and a number of other activities. This plan that we're in currently ends in 2021. So I've been writing songs that are directly related to these plans and activities that the Baha'i faith is and friends of the Baha'is are involved in, like these junior youth groups and devotional meetings and study circles. So this is all, I guess, planned music, and it's called 2021. So I have a deadline, self-imposed, for when it has to be done, but actually I'm making great progress on it. So I hope by the fall I have something tangible and ready to go. I'm finishing up, tidying up some of the writing, and I've got a nice little recording set up at home, so I'll be able to do a lot of it here, and maybe I'll take some of it elsewhere and get somebody with a little more expertise to put some finishing touches on it. So I'm excited about that.
So Steve, thank you so much for sharing your music with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Warren. It's great to have this conversation, and it's been a lot of fun making this music, and got lots more coming, I hope.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Steve Zaat, singer-songwriter who writes songs on themes about the Baha'i faith. You can find his music on his YouTube channel, Steve Zaat Music, Zaat being Z-A-A-T. You can find this interview and other interviews on abahaiperspective.com and on the YouTube channel, A Baha'i Perspective. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes by searching for A Baha'i Perspective. For information specifically on the Baha'i faith, you can go to the website baha'i.org, or you can call the number 1-800-22-UNITE. I hope you join me next time on A Baha'i Perspective. This is WXOJLP Northampton, 103.3 FM, your Valley Free Radio station, streaming at www.valleyfreeradio.org.